The emergency beacon cut through space like a knife through silence. Deep in the outer rim, where most civilized species feared to travel, a massive colony ship drifted helplessly while death closed in from all sides. The ship carried 400,000 souls, all that remained of the Villani people after their homeworld died in stellar collapse. Communication Officer Blake wiped sweat from his forehead as he monitored the weakening signal at Tethys Station. For 3 days straight, he had listened to the same desperate message growing fainter with each transmission. The words were translated from Villani, but the pain behind them needed no translation. This is Commander Thal of the colony vessel. Harmony's Edge, we are under attack by Kresh forces. Our shields are failing. We have women and children aboard. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need immediate assistance. The message had been broadcast across 17 different emergency frequencies. Every major power in the galaxy had received it. The response had been exactly what Blake expected from the so-called civilized species of the Confederation of Worlds. Nothing. Blake pulled up the tactical display showing the last known position of the Villani ship. Red dots surrounded a single blue marker like hungry wolves circling wounded prey. The Kresh swarm had found the colony ship 2 days ago and had been systematically destroying it piece by piece. They were not interested in a quick kill. The insectoid raiders preferred to harvest their victims slowly, taking what they needed while leaving the rest to die in the vacuum of space. Any word from the Confederation? Blake asked his supervisor, Lieutenant Torres, who had been making calls to every diplomatic contact he could reach. Torres shook his head with disgust. The Ultruan peacekeepers say the sector is too dangerous for intervention. The hegemony claims it falls outside their jurisdiction. The Therlian Empire is holding emergency sessions to discuss the matter. He slammed his fist on the console. They will debate this until every last Villani is dead. Blake understood the political reality. The Villani were refugees with no homeworld, no military, and no valuable resources to offer. They had been traveling for 6 months looking for a place to settle when the Kresh found them. In the cold mathematics of galactic politics, 400,000 civilians were not worth risking a war with the swarm. The latest transmission crackled through the speakers. Weaker than before. Hull breaches on decks 40 through 65. Life support failing in sections 7 and 8. We cannot hold much longer. Our children are dying. Please, someone help us. Blake closed his eyes and tried to block out the desperation in the Villani commander's voice. He had heard similar pleas before during his 15 years in galactic communications. Most of the time, there was nothing anyone could do. Space was vast, and help was usually too far away or too politically complicated to arrange, but this time felt different. Maybe it was because the Villani were known throughout the galaxy as healers and philosophers, people who had never harmed anyone. Maybe it was because Blake could hear children crying in the background of the transmissions. Or maybe it was because he knew that somewhere in the darkness, hundreds of thousands of beings were waiting for a miracle that would never come. Torres was pacing now, his face red with frustration. I have been in contact with 47 different agencies, councils, and military commands. Do you know what they all have in common? They all say the same thing. Too dangerous? Too expensive, too complicated. Meanwhile, an entire civilization is about to be wiped out. Blake had worked with Torres for 3 years and had never seen him this angry. The lieutenant was usually calm and professional, the kind of officer who followed procedures and respected chain of command. But watching the slow death of the Villani ship was breaking something inside him. What about our own people? Blake asked quietly. What about Earth Command? Torres stopped pacing. Earth Command? Blake, we have been part of the galactic community for 15 years. We barely have enough ships to patrol our own space. The Confederation barely considers us a minor power. Blake pulled up the human fleet positions on his display. Most of Earth's military was scattered across dozens of star systems, protecting human colonies and trade routes. The ships were smaller than the massive dreadnoughts favored by older species, but they were fast and well armed. More importantly, they were crewed by humans who had grown up hearing stories about impossible odds and miraculous rescues. "The Villani saved my sister," Blake said suddenly. Torres looked at him with surprise. 5 years ago, she was dying from neural plague. The doctors at New Geneva said there was nothing they could do. A Villani medical team was passing through the system and they stopped to help. They worked for 2 days straight without rest. They saved her life and asked for nothing. In return, Torres was quiet for a long moment. The distress signal continued to pulse weakly in the background, each transmission fainter than the last. Blake could see the numbers on his screen dropping steadily. Shield strength at 8%. Life support at 30%. Time remaining estimated at 6 hours. "Earth Command will never approve a mission like this," Torres said finally. "We would be risking our entire fleet against an enemy that has been terrorizing the galaxy for centuries. The Kresh swarm has destroyed civilizations that were far more advanced than us." Blake nodded. "I know, but what if we do not ask for permission?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Torres looked at his young communications officer with new respect. Blake had always been quiet and dutiful, the kind of person who followed orders without question. But now there was something different in his eyes, something that reminded Torres why he had joined the human military in the first place. "The political consequences would be enormous," Torres said. "We could be expelled from the Confederation. Other species might see us as rogue actors. Our diplomatic relations could be set back decades." Blake gestured toward the display showing the dying Villani ship. "In 6 hours, there will be no one left to save. In 6 hours, 400,000. People will be dead because everyone was too afraid to act." Torres made his decision. He opened a priority channel to Earth Command and began typing a message that would change the course of galactic history. "Emergency transmission to Admiral Hayes. Request immediate authorization for humanitarian rescue mission. Villani colony. Ship under attack by Kresh forces. Time critical. Recommend full fleet deployment." The response came back within minutes. "Authorization granted. Deploying all available vessels. Estimated arrival in 18 hours. Tell the Villani to hold on. The cavalry is coming." Blake smiled for the first time in days. "Should we inform the Confederation?" Torres was already coordinating with Earth Command. "We will tell them after we save the Villani. Sometimes it is better to ask forgiveness than permission." As human ships across the galaxy received their new orders, Blake sent one final message to the dying colony ship. "Harmony's Edge, this is Tethys Station. Help is on the way. Do not give up. Humanity is coming." Admiral Hayes had been reviewing supply reports when the emergency transmission arrived from Tethys Station. The 70-year-old veteran read the message twice before reaching for his personal communicator. Within minutes, every human military commander in the galaxy was receiving the same urgent orders. "This is Admiral Hayes to all fleet commanders. We have a humanitarian crisis in the Outer Rim. The Villani colony ship Harmony's Edge is under attack by Kresh forces. 400,000 civilians are in immediate danger. I am authorizing the largest deployment in human military history. Every available ship is to proceed to the following coordinates immediately." The response was immediate and overwhelming. From Earth's home fleet to the frontier patrol ships guarding the outer colonies, human vessels began converging on the coordinates. The sight would have been impossible to imagine just 20 years earlier. When humanity was still confined to a single star system, Captain Reed was conducting training exercises with his squadron when the orders came through. His ship, the destroyer Indomitable, was one of the newer vessels in the human fleet. Unlike the massive dreadnoughts favored by other species, human ships were built for speed and flexibility. They could change course quickly, operate independently for weeks, and adapt to unexpected situations. "All ships, this is Reed, set course for the Outer Rim, maximum speed. We have people to save." The human fleet that assembled was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of the traditional formation of a few large capital ships supported by smaller vessels, humanity deployed 200 ships of various sizes. There were destroyers like the indomitable frigates designed for escort duty and the new Hornet class. Fighters that could operate independently in deep space. Lieutenant Park, Reed's tactical officer, studied the enemy positions as they approached the combat zone. Sir, intelligence reports show over 300 Kresh bioships surrounding the Villani vessel. They have been systematically destroying the colony ship section by section. Reed nodded grimly. The Kresh were an ancient enemy, older than most galactic civilizations. Their bioships were grown rather than built, living vessels that could repair themselves and adapt to enemy tactics. They had been terrorizing the Outer Rim for generations, and most species had learned to avoid them, rather than fight. What do we know about their tactics? Reed asked. Park pulled up a holographic display showing previous Kresh attacks. They use swarm tactics, surrounding their target and attacking from all directions. Their bioships are heavily armored and can regenerate damage. Most species try to match them with equally large ships, but that plays to their strengths. Reed studied the tactical data with interest. The Kresh had developed their strategies over thousands of years, perfecting them against every major galactic power. They expected their enemies to follow conventional military doctrine, to form battle lines and engage in organized combat. What they had never encountered was humanity's approach to warfare. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the Villani ship, Park reported. The voice that came through the speakers was weak but determined. Human vessels, this is Commander Thal of the Harmony's Edge. We are grateful for your response, but you must understand the situation. The Kresh have over 300 ships. You are greatly outnumbered. We do not wish for you to sacrifice yourselves in a hopeless battle. Reed opened a channel to respond. Commander Thal, this is Captain Reed of the Human Fleet. We appreciate your concern, but we did not come all this way to turn back now. We have a saying on Earth, the difficult we do immediately, the impossible takes a little longer. The human fleet continued its approach, but instead of forming the traditional battle lines that the Kresh expected, they began to scatter. To outside observers it looked like chaos. Ships broke formation and began moving in seemingly random patterns. Some accelerated while others slowed down. The neat military formation dissolved into what appeared to be barely controlled confusion. Sir, the other ship commanders are requesting clarification on our battle plan, Park reported. Reed smiled. Tell them to follow their training. Remember what we learned about fighting superior enemies. When you cannot match their strength, you change the rules of the game. The human military had studied every major battle in galactic history, learning from the defeats of other species. They had identified a common weakness in how advanced civilizations fought wars. Most species had become so sophisticated that they had forgotten the basic principles of warfare: surprise, speed, and overwhelming force applied at the right moment. The Kresh are expecting us to form battle lines and engage them in organized combat, Reed explained to his crew. They have perfected their defenses against that kind of attack, but what if we do not fight the way they expect? The human ships continued their seemingly chaotic approach, but there was method to the madness. Each vessel was following a carefully planned pattern that would be invisible to the enemy until it was too late. The Kresh bioships began clustering together, trying to form defensive formations around their most important vessels. They are grouping up, Park observed. Just like our analysts predicted, Reed nodded. The Kresh had evolved from hive-minded insects, and their military tactics reflected that heritage. They were excellent at coordinating large numbers of ships, but they had trouble adapting to unexpected situations. They looked for patterns and tried to counter them with predetermined responses. All ships, this is Reed, execute pattern Delta. Remember, we are not trying to win a fair fight. We are trying to save lives. The human fleet began its final approach, each ship moving independently but following the same overall strategy. 2. To Kresh, it looked like a disorganized mob of primitive vessels. They had no way of knowing that they were about to face an enemy that had turned unconventional warfare into an art form. Sir, the Villani ship is hailing us again, Park reported. Commander. Thal's voice came through the speakers, filled with amazement. Human vessels, what are you doing? Your formation makes no tactical sense. Reed opened the channel one more time. Commander, you are about to learn something about humanity. We specialize in making no sense. It confuses our enemies and gives us the advantage we need. The distance between the two fleets was closing rapidly. The crushed bioships were positioning themselves for what they expected to be a straightforward battle. They had fought this kind of engagement countless times before, always with the same result. The enemy would form battle lines, trade shots, at long range, and eventually be worn down by superior numbers and firepower. But as the human ships entered weapons range, something unexpected happened. Instead of slowing down to engage in a traditional battle, they accelerated. The entire fleet began moving faster, their seemingly random movements becoming more pronounced. Ships that had been heading in one direction suddenly changed course, diving and weaving through space like a school of fish avoiding a predator. "Sir, all ships report ready," Park announced. "Weapon systems are online and targeting solutions are locked in." Reed looked at the tactical display one final time. The Kresh had fallen into the trap perfectly, clustering their ships together in defensive formations. They were exactly where the human fleet needed them to be. "All ships, this is Reed. You know what to do. Let us show the galaxy what happens when you threaten innocent people in front of humans." The battle was about to begin, but it would be unlike any engagement in galactic history. The Kresh were about to learn that humanity did not play by the established rules of warfare. They were about to discover that sometimes the best strategy was to throw out the strategy entirely and trust in human ingenuity, courage, and the willingness to do whatever it took to save lives. As the first shots were fired, Reed allowed himself a small smile. The cavalry had arrived, and they were about to give the galaxy a demonstration of what made humanity different from every other species among the stars. The first explosion lit up the darkness of space like a miniature star. Lieutenant Park watched his tactical display as the human fleet engaged the Kresh swarm in a battle that defied every rule of conventional warfare. What had started as an apparently chaotic approach was revealing itself as something far more dangerous. "Direct hit on the lead bioship," Park reported as the Indomitable's missiles found their target. "Their regeneration systems are trying to compensate, but the damage is extensive." Reed was focused on the larger battle, watching as his fellow captains executed the plan they had drilled countless times in simulation. The human fleet had split into 5 groups, each moving in a different pattern that seemed random to outside observers. But there was a method to the madness that the Kresh were beginning to understand too late. "The enemy is trying to adapt to our tactics," Park observed. "They are repositioning their ships to counter our approach vectors." Reed nodded. "That is exactly what we want them to do. Every time they try to counter one of our moves, they expose themselves to the others. They are thinking like a hive mind, trying to find the pattern and respond to it systematically." The Kresh bioships were indeed struggling to understand what they were facing. Their entire military doctrine was based on reading enemy formations and responding with predetermined tactics. But the human fleet refused to stay in formation long enough for the Kresh to develop effective counters. One moment, a group of human destroyers would be attacking from above, forcing the Kresh to reposition their defenses. The next moment, those same ships would be gone, replaced by a squadron of frigates attacking from below. The Kresh would adjust their formation again, only to find themselves under attack from a completely different direction. "They are getting frustrated," Park noted, watching the Kresh ships begin to cluster more tightly together. "Look at their formation. They are bunching up, trying to create overlapping fields of fire." Reed smiled grimly. "Perfect. Signal all ships. Execute Phoenix Protocol." The Phoenix Protocol was humanity's answer to enemies with superior numbers and firepower. Instead of trying to match the enemy ship for ship, the human fleet would use mobility and coordination to create brief moments of local superiority. All 200 human ships would converge on a single point, deliver overwhelming firepower, and then scatter before the enemy could respond. The execution was flawless. The seemingly random movements of the human fleet suddenly revealed their true purpose as every ship began moving toward the same target. The Kresh bioships found themselves facing concentrated fire from multiple directions, their defensive formations useless against an enemy that attacked from everywhere at once. "Look at that," Park whispered in amazement. "The lead bioship is breaking apart." The massive Kresh vessel, which had seemed invulnerable just moments before, was suffering catastrophic damage under the concentrated human assault. Its bio-armor was regenerating, but not fast enough to keep up with the destruction being inflicted on it. Within minutes, the ship that had been leading the attack on the Villani colony vessel was reduced to drifting debris, but the humans were not finished. Even as the lead bioship died, the fleet was already repositioning for their next target. The Phoenix Protocol called for rapid engagement and equally rapid disengagement, preventing the enemy from bringing their superior numbers to bear on any single human ship. "Sir, the Kresh are attempting to surround us," Park reported. "They are trying to use their numbers to trap individual ships." Reed was monitoring the communications from the other human vessels. "Captain Morris, you have 3 bioships converging. On your position, recommend immediate withdrawal." The response came back immediately. "Negative, Reed. We are too close to the Villani ship. If we withdraw, they will be exposed to enemy fire." This was the problem with humanity's approach to warfare. They refused to abandon their objectives, even when tactical doctrine called for strategic withdrawal. Other species might have sacrificed the colony ship to save their own fleet, but humans had a different definition of victory. "All ships, this is Reed. We are not leaving without our people. Morris, hold your position. We are coming to support you." The human fleet began another coordinated maneuver, this time designed to relieve pressure on the ships closest to the Villani vessel. It was a risky move that required precise timing and perfect coordination. If even one ship was out of position, the entire formation could collapse. "Sir, I am reading massive energy signatures from the Kresh fleet," Park reported. "They are charging some kind of weapon system." Reed studied the tactical display with growing concern. The Kresh were known for their biological weapons, but intelligence. Reports suggested they had developed something new. If they were preparing to use it on the colony ship, hundreds of thousands of civilians would die in minutes. "All ships, priority target is the large bioship at coordinates 77 Alpha. They are preparing to fire on the civilians. We need to stop them now." The human fleet responded with the kind of desperate courage that had made them famous. Throughout the galaxy, ships that had been engaged with other targets immediately broke off and began converging on the new threat. They flew through fields of enemy fire, taking damage but never wavering from their objective. Lieutenant Park was coordinating the attack when his console exploded in sparks. "Sir, we have taken a direct hit. Main power is fluctuating and our weapon systems are offline." Reed did not hesitate. "Engineering, I need weapons back online in 60 seconds. Park, can you maintain targeting with auxiliary power?" "I can try, sir, but our accuracy will be reduced." Reed looked at the tactical display showing the Kresh weapon charging to full power. In 30 seconds, it would fire on the defenseless colony ship. The human fleet was closing fast, but they might not make it in time. "All ships, this is Reed. We are going to get one shot at this. Make it count." The human fleet opened fire at maximum range, every ship targeting the same bioship. The concentrated firepower was impressive, but the distance was too great for maximum effectiveness. Some shots missed entirely, while others were by the bioship's regenerating armor, but it was enough. The massive weapon system that had been charging to fire on the colony ship flickered and died as critical systems were damaged. The bioship began to list to one side, its biological processes disrupted by the human attack. "Direct hit," Park reported. "The weapon is offline. The colony ship is safe." Reed allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before returning to the immediate tactical situation. The human fleet had prevented a massacre, but they were still outnumbered and outgunned. The Kresh were adapting to their tactics, and the element of surprise was fading. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Commander Thal," Park announced. The Villani commander's voice came through the speakers, filled with awe and gratitude. Human vessels, what you have done is impossible. You have defeated ships that have terrorized the galaxy for generations. How? Reed opened a channel to respond. Commander, we have a different approach to impossible situations. We do not accept that they cannot be solved. We just find a different way to solve them. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. The Kresh swarm was beginning to show signs of confusion and disorganization. Their ancient tactics were proving ineffective against an enemy that refused to fight by the established rules. All ships maintain formation, Reed ordered. We have shown them that they can be beaten. Now let us finish what we started. The human fleet prepared for the next phase of the battle, knowing that they had already achieved something remarkable. They had proven that courage and ingenuity could overcome superior numbers and technology. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, but most importantly, they had given hope to 400,000 civilians who had been facing certain death. The Villani colony ship was still in danger, but now it had protectors who would not abandon it no matter the cost. Engineer Davis had never seen anything like the damage aboard the Villani colony ship. The massive vessel stretched for kilometers in every direction, its hull scarred by weeks of Kresh attacks. Emergency lights flickered in the corridors as he and his team made their way through sections that had been sealed off to prevent atmospheric loss. The structural integrity is worse than we thought, Davis reported over his communicator to Reed. They have hull breaches on 40 different decks. Life support is failing in entire sections. I do not know how they have kept this ship together for so long. Reed's voice crackled back through the static. How long do you need to make her spaceworthy? Davis examined the damage reports flooding his portable scanner. Sir, with all due respect, this ship will never be spaceworthy again. The Kresh have systematically destroyed every critical system. We would need weeks just to patch the hull breaches, and that is assuming we had unlimited supplies. The reality of the situation was becoming clear. The Harmony's edge was dying, and there was nothing anyone could do to save it. The ship that had carried the last remnants of Villani civilization across the galaxy was going to become their tomb unless something drastic was done. Then we bring them to us, Reed decided. All ships prepare for mass evacuation. We are going to move 400,000 people from that ship to our fleet. The order sent shockwaves through the human fleet. No one had ever attempted an evacuation on such a scale during active combat. The logistics alone seemed impossible, but the alternative was unthinkable. Commander Thal met Davis at the main airlock, his pale blue skin marked with stress patterns that indicated extreme exhaustion. The Villani had been fighting for survival for days, and it showed in every line of his body. Your people are attempting something that has never been done before, Thal said. Moving 400,000 beings during a battle is madness. Davis nodded. Probably, but we are good at madness. It is one of our better qualities. The evacuation began immediately. Human ships docked with the colony vessel wherever possible, their crews working frantically to transfer civilians to safety. The process was complicated by the fact that Villani physiology was different from human, requiring different atmospheric conditions and life support systems. We can modify our environmental controls, reported Chief Engineer Martinez from the destroyer Relentless. The Villani need higher humidity and slightly different atmospheric composition. It will be cramped, but we can make it work. Dr. Patel, the fleet's chief medical officer, was coordinating with Villani healers to ensure the evacuation proceeded safely. The children are our first priority, she announced. Then the elderly and injured. We will work our way through the civilian population systematically. What followed was a demonstration of human adaptability that amazed even the Villani. Human crew members cheerfully gave up their quarters to house refugee families. Mess halls were converted into temporary living spaces. Recreation areas became nurseries for Villani children who had never seen the sky of their homeworld. This is highly unusual, observed Dr. Avayan, the Villani's chief medical officer, as she watched human sailors sharing their rations with hungry refugees. Your people are sacrificing their own comfort for strangers. Lieutenant Park, who had been coordinating the evacuation from the Indomitable, looked up from his console. It is what we do. Most of us grew up in crowded conditions anyway. A few weeks of sharing space will not kill us. The evacuation proceeded with military efficiency, but it was not without its challenges. The Kresh had noticed the increased activity around the colony ship and were mounting renewed attacks. Human ships had to maintain defensive positions while simultaneously conducting the largest civilian transfer in galactic history. "We have incoming," reported the tactical officer aboard the frigate Defiant. 3 bioships are breaking through our defensive perimeter. They are heading directly for the colony ship. Reed coordinated the response from the Indomitable, which had positioned itself between the attackers and the defenseless civilians. "All ships, intercept those bioships. We cannot let them reach the evacuation zone." The battle that followed was fought with desperate intensity. Human ships engaged. The Kresh attackers at close range, trading fire while civilian transports continued to ferry refugees to safety. The cost was high, with several human vessels suffering significant damage, but the evacuation continued. "Sir, we have a problem," Park reported. "The colony ship's power core is destabilizing. The Kresh attacks have damaged the containment systems. We have maybe 20 minutes before it goes critical." Reed felt his heart sink. They had rescued perhaps half the civilians, but 200,000 people were still aboard the dying ship. At the current rate of evacuation, they would never get everyone off in time. "All ships, this is Reed. We are accelerating the evacuation. I want every available shuttle, cargo pod, and escape pod moving civilians. We are running out of time." The human fleet responded with characteristic determination. Ships that had been providing defensive fire repositioned to assist with the evacuation. Cargo bays were open to vacuum and pressurize for emergency transport. Every possible space was utilized to move people to safety. "The power core is fluctuating," reported Davis from deep within the colony ship. "I am reading cascade failures throughout the system. We might have less time than we thought." Commander Thal appeared on the bridge of the Indomitable, having been among the first group evacuated. His expression was one of profound gratitude mixed with desperate concern for his people still trapped aboard the dying ship. "Captain Reed, I must ask you to consider the mathematics of this situation," Thal said quietly. "You cannot save everyone. You should withdraw your ships while you still can." Reed looked at the Villani commander with steely determination. "Commander, I appreciate your concern, but we are not leaving anyone behind. That is not how humans operate." The evacuation continued with frantic urgency. Human crews worked without rest, moving civilians as quickly as safety would allow. The ship's corridors echoed with the sounds of crying children and anxious families, but also with the calm voices of human sailors offering reassurance and guidance. 10 minutes to power core failure," Davis reported. "I am reading complete. System collapse across multiple decks. We need to get the last civilians off now." The final phase of the evacuation was a race against time. Human ships positioned themselves at every available docking port, their crews working frantically to load the last refugees. The colony ship shuddered as internal explosions began to tear it apart from within. "That is the last transport," reported the shuttle pilot from the final rescue mission. "All civilians are accounted for. We got them all." Reed allowed himself a moment of relief before issuing the final order. "All ships, clear the area. The colony ship is going to explode." The human fleet pulled back just as the Harmony's Edge died in a brilliant explosion that lit up the sector. The ship that had carried the last survivors of an entire civilization was gone, but its people lived on aboard human vessels that had risked everything to save them. "Sir, we are receiving messages from across the fleet," Park reported. "All ships report successful evacuation. 400,000 Villani civilians are safe." Reed nodded with satisfaction. "Signal all ships, mission accomplished, we are going home." The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. The human fleet now carried the responsibility of caring for an entire population until they could find a new home. It was a burden that would test every resource and facility they had, but it was one they accepted without question. As the fleet prepared to depart, Reed received a final message from Commander Thal. "Captain, what your people have done today will be remembered for generations. You have shown the galaxy what true courage looks like." Reed smiled as he gave the order to set course for Earth. "Commander, we just did what anyone would do. We saw people who needed help, and we helped them. That is what makes us human." The Galactic Assembly had never seen anything like the chaos that erupted when Admiral Hayes entered the chamber. Representatives from 47 different species filled the vast hall, their voices rising in a cacophony of languages as they debated the implications of humanity's unauthorized military action in the Outer Rim. Hayes walked calmly to the speaker's podium, his weathered face showing no emotion as Ambassador Rex of the Theralian Empire stood to address him. The tall reptilian diplomat's scales shifted color to indicate his agitation, a display that would have intimidated most species. "Admiral Hayes, your actions have violated 17 different articles of the Galactic Accords," Rex declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You deployed military forces without authorization, ignored established territorial boundaries, and engaged in combat operations that could have triggered a sector-wide conflict." The assembled delegates murmured their agreement, but Hayes remained unmoved. He had expected this reaction from the galactic community. What he had not expected was the response that came from the Villani section of the assembly. "The human fleet saved our entire civilization," declared Speaker Mel, the elderly Villani who had been elected to represent the refugees. When every other species in this assembly chose to debate and delay, humanity acted. 400,000 of my people are alive today because of their courage?" The chamber erupted in competing voices as delegates took sides. Some species condemned humanity's reckless action, while others praised their results. At the center of it all, Hayes waited patiently for the noise to die down before speaking. "I understand your concerns," Hayes began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "You are worried about precedent. You are worried about stability. You are worried about what happens when species start acting unilaterally instead of following established procedures." He paused, looking around the chamber at the representatives of civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. "But I want you to consider something. While you were debating jurisdiction and protocols, an entire civilization was dying. While you were discussing the political implications of intervention, children were suffocating in the vacuum of space." The Altrian delegate, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell, spoke with a voice like chiming bells. "Admiral, we understand the humanitarian concerns, but proper procedures exist for a reason. The Outer Rim is a dangerous sector. Military intervention requires careful planning and coordination." Hayes nodded. "You are right. The Outer Rim is dangerous. That is exactly why the Villani needed help immediately, not after 3 months of committee meetings and diplomatic negotiations." The debate continued for hours, but Hayes could see that public opinion was shifting. The rescue of the Villani had captured the imagination of civilizations across the galaxy. News networks were broadcasting interviews with grateful refugees. Medical teams were documenting the advanced healing techniques that Villani doctors were sharing with their human rescuers. "The results speak for themselves," Hayes continued. "Not only did we save 400,000 lives, but we eliminated a crush swarm that had been terrorizing the sector for decades. Trading ships can now pass through that region safely. The threat that you have all been avoiding for generations is gone." Captain Reed, who had been invited to testify about the battle, stood to address the assembly. His uniform still bore scorch marks from the rescue operation, and his quiet confidence impressed even the most skeptical delegates. "The Kresh swarm had never been defeated in open combat," Reed explained. "Every species in this chamber had learned to avoid them rather than fight them. But avoidance is not a solution when innocent people are dying." The representative from the hegemony, a massive insectoid being with compound eyes, clicked his mandibles in what might have been approval. Your tactics were unconventional, Captain. Our military analysts are still trying to understand how you achieved victory against such overwhelming odds, Reed smiled. We did not try to fight them the way they expected. We used their own assumptions against them. They were prepared for traditional warfare, but they had never faced an enemy that refuses to follow the rules. The testimony continued as other human officers described the rescue operation. The galaxy learned about the cramped conditions aboard human ships as they housed Volani refugees. They heard about human crew members giving up their own food to feed hungry children. They saw footage of human engineers working alongside Volani technicians to repair damaged systems, but it was the testimony of the Volani themselves that had the greatest impact. Commander Thal described the final hours aboard the dying colony ship. When hope had almost disappeared, Dr. Avayan spoke about the human medical teams who worked without rest to save injured civilians. Children drew pictures of the human sailors who had comforted them during the evacuation. Your people did more than save our lives, Speaker Mel told the assembly. They restored our faith in the possibility of compassion. In a galaxy where most species calculate the cost of helping others, humanity simply helped. The political implications of the rescue were becoming clear. Trade delegations were requesting meetings with human representatives. Military advisors wanted to study human tactics. Scientists sought to understand the technology that had made the rescue possible. Ambassador Rex made one final attempt to maintain the old order. This sets a dangerous precedent. If every species begins acting unilaterally, the Confederation will collapse into chaos. Hayes stood to deliver his final statement. Ambassador, the Confederation was created to promote peace and cooperation among galactic civilizations. But what kind of peace allows genocide to occur while we debate procedures? What kind of cooperation abandons innocent people because helping them is politically inconvenient? The vote, when it came, was closer than many had expected. The older, more established species voted to censure humanity for their unauthorized action. But the younger civilizations, the smaller colonies, and the species that had themselves been victims of aggression voted to commend the human response. The final tally was announced by the Assembly Speaker, an ancient being whose species had helped found the Confederation centuries ago. By a vote of 24 to 23, the Assembly finds that while the human action violated established protocols, it was justified by the humanitarian crisis and the successful outcome. The chamber erupted in noise as delegates reacted to the narrow victory. But Hayes was already thinking beyond the political implications. The rescue had changed how the galaxy viewed humanity, but more importantly, it had changed how humanity viewed itself. 3 months later, Captain Reed found himself aboard the newly constructed space station Haven, which had been built to house the Volani refugees while they searched for a permanent home. The station orbited a garden world that had been offered by the Centauran Republic, one of the species that had supported humanity in the assembly vote. The children are adapting well, reported Dr. Avayan as she showed Reed through the medical facilities. They speak both Volani and human languages now. Some of them say they want to join human Starfleet when they grow up. Reed watched Volani and human children playing together in the station's recreation areas. The sight would have been impossible to imagine just a few months ago, but now it seemed natural. The rescue had created bonds between the two species that would last for generations. Captain, we have received another distress signal, reported his communications officer over the intercom. A cargo ship is under attack by pirates in the Vega system. They are requesting immediate assistance. Reed looked at Dr. Avayan with a smile. Doctor, it seems we have work to do. As the human fleet prepared to respond to another crisis, Reed reflected on how much had changed since that desperate message from the dying Volani ship. The phrase, calling for humanity, had entered common usage throughout the galaxy. It meant more than requesting military assistance. It represented hope in the face of despair, the belief that impossible problems could have solutions, and the faith that someone would answer when civilization itself was at stake. The galaxy had learned what the human species had always known. When someone needs help, When the odds are impossible, when everyone else says it cannot be done, that is when you call the humans. Reed gave the order to set course for the Vega system, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, people were counting on them to arrive in time. The universe was vast and dangerous, but it was also filled with the possibility of heroism. As long as humanity continued to answer the call, that possibility would never die. The rescue of the Villani had sent a message that echoed across the galaxy. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and the universe would never be the same. In a cosmos where most civilizations had grown cautious and calculating, there was still one species willing to risk everything for strangers, to fight impossible odds for the sake of justice, and to prove that sometimes the right thing to do was also the brave thing to do. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of all those who believed that heroes still existed among the stars. The galaxy was learning that when darkness threatened to consume the light, humanity would be there to push it back. They had come to the stars not as conquerors or merchants, but as guardians of the innocent and champions of the lost. And that made all the difference.